Hello, everyone. Welcome to Snap Take. This is Glazer of Snap Judgments, the official podcast of Marvel Snap Zone. And the OTA is completely nuts. The OTA is out. It is, again, completely freaking nuts. We're going to fly through this intro stuff because we got to get to that OTA. It changes everything. I cannot overstate how important this OTA is. This is arguably the biggest ever, bigger than the one that killed Bounce. We've got a new meta. Let's talk. First, hit that sub button, like, comment. We're going to give you at least 15 decks today. We give you 2 decks every single weekday. Proven decks. Check us out. Next, check out Wolver Snap over on his YouTube. If you comment on his Nico gameplay video, I'll give one of you in a contest a magic birthday party bundle. All you got to do is sub to him and comment that video, and you're entered to win. Gotta support the friend on his birthday. Okay. Ready? Elsa. Now goes +2, not +3. Loki is a 4/5, not a 3/5. Collector is reverted to a 2/2. Angela is buffed to a 2/2, but now only gives +1. Sauron goes to a 3/2. Uatu goes to a 1/2. Hellcow goes to a crazy high 4/8. That's the same power as MODOK. And Spectrum gets her pre-Marvels bump to a 6/7 +2 on Spectrum. We are not playing with this OTA. I'm going to cover them one by one right before we talk about each of the decks. Cool? This is humongous. All right. So last week, Glenn was on our podcast. He was on the Snap Judgments podcast. You can find it on Marvel Snap Zone. It's 1,000% worth listening to, even if this OTA immediately makes it out of date. He all but told us. If you listen to what he said, he all but told us Elsa's getting nerfed next week. I know it's a season pass card. I know it's controversial. Everyone yelled that Elsa was pay to win. Maybe she was, maybe she wasn't. We're not here to litigate that conversation. Instead, what I'm going to say is she's still great. She was the best card in the game, and she's still great. This is probably where she would have started. They pushed her fairly hard. If you bought her, you should not be sad you bought her. This card is still going to be great. It's still going to be meta. You just no longer have the very best card in the game that you have to figure out why not to run. She is a great card. What's more, most of the decks that were great with her were great before her. She didn't make anything but maybe bounce tier 1. Like the move decks that were at the top of the meta, the Loki decks that were at the top of the meta. Excuse me. They were at the top of the meta before Elsa. Which means that if we remove Elsa from the equation, they should still be at or near the top of the meta. All good? The bounce may have a problem. We're going to have to test that. We won't know until we actually feel how the number difference is. But bounce was honestly probably a tier 2 deck anyway, so I don't think that's the biggest effect. If Loki's not tier 1, I don't think this is the change that did it. I think the change that did it is its cost. We'll talk about Loki later. For now, let's look at some pure Elsa decks. All right, the first one is the Lambi Thanos. If you want a full guide on this, it was my video this very morning. You should check it out. Also, fair note, we have a podcast out with Educated Collins and Call Me Sal on the Marvel Snaps on YouTube, where we talk about sleeper decks that I think is excellent. Really, we had a great time. So if you want to check that out too. But this deck was sort of pushed over the top by Elsa's power. But if you remember a month ago, pre-Elsa, this was already a top tier deck, right? Like we were already seeing once Alioth came out, before Elsa came out, this coming to the top of the meta. Now, excuse me, it's a deck that got 2 nerfs. It's a deck that Elsa and Alioth both got nerfed in. However, that Elsa nerf also affects all of this deck's predators. That Alioth nerf hurts, but it hurts less than almost anywhere else because Professor X lets you know where to play the card. And plus, the deck gets Nico as basically an extra Infinity Stone. TM, KM Best, that's his quote. But you get an extra Infinity Stone now from Nico. So, like, that's amazing, right? Like, that's absolutely fantastic. You've got all of these different tools. I'm going to tell you right now, I think because of this change, I might cut America Chavez or Daredevil because you can no longer afford to miss and just go, well, I'll just fill a lane and get +3 power and it doesn't matter as much. but it's awfully close. I think that this is still one of the five-ish best decks in the game. I don't think the Elsa nerf changes it. No one's been playing this yet, as far as I can tell, and I think this is also one of the best decks in the game, and I don't think it's gotten worse. The Darkhawk package is still great. Everyone seems to have forgotten it. Ooh, I should have cut Angela from it. Let's pretend Angela is now Zabu in this deck, shall we? This deck with Zabu and Angela's bot is still an absolute top tier deck. It is one of the best decks, one of the best things you can do. And if you don't have Zabu, you can easily run Rogue or Cosmo in that spot. It shouldn't super matter. There's plenty of options. But Vision as a 10, not an 11 is it hurts, but it's still bigger than Java's. It's still pretty damn good, right? Darkhawk getting +2, a Rockslide getting +2, all these cards getting +2 is absolutely phenomenal. That I immediately want to take out Angela should be a hint as to how I feel about the Angela nerf. But I think everything else about this deck is still extremely top tier. What this deck is it's like all the best cards in the game outside of Shuri Nimrod. Sorry, not Shuri Nimrod, Shuri Red Skull. This deck is just like every great card that's not in Shuri Red Skull. And thus, I think it is really, really, really worth playing. I think it's one of the best things you can be. Speaking of best things you can be doing, Evazord won a tournament with this deck. I don't think I even edited it, to be completely honest. This should be fantastic still. Man Thing's time to shine as Luke Cage is cycling slowly out of the meta again. Shadow King's time to shine. You've got both of those cards. You've got your own Luke. You've got Elsa. You should be able to put massive power on the board still, and the opponent should really, really, really have a hard time countering you. Eva is absolutely brilliant at this, and it's worth checking out his stream, even though it's not English language. You will learn a lot from watching him play. This deck is awesome. And I don't think two less power is going to change it. Like a 1/4 Nightcrawler, you see how good a 1/4 is with very often now with Nico. 1/4 is great. And you're still pumping Craven. You still have Nightcrawler, Jeff, and Silk to pump Craven to silly heights. That can't be lowered by Luke, right? Like there's just so much to like about this deck. You need to try it out. We also have this deck. This is a bounce list, and I'm not sure if this works at all. This is the one I'm not sure. I don't think we can afford Turn America, and I don't think draw order matters as much because we're not trying to get that Angela curve now. We still want Elsa, we still want Bishop, right? But like if we don't get them, we should be fine. The big key card that we're running for me that we were running America for was Bast. So we'll see if that changes it, but there are now too many cards for this deck, even cutting Angela. So it's become harder and harder to run to the point where like when Elsa was at her peak, Lambie cut the damn Hitmonkey. I think was wrong, but like, hey, what are you gonna do? I don't know if this is good. This was already kind of tier 2, and I think it's very tier 2 now, probably. Maybe tier 3. So it's worth testing because Nico is great, right? And Elsa's not much worse, but I don't know. I think this is going to be our big question mark going forward. Next up, Loki is a 4/5. Okay, I think Loki's still great as a 4/5. I wish he was a 4/6 or a 3/4. I think a 4/5 is rough. We were never really playing Loki on 3. What we're losing is that turn 6 play of Loki and Coulson, which is rough, but like you can still get the same basic number of cards. You can actually get more cards by going Snow Guard and like one of the other card generators for 1 and Loki on the last turn. And that's even the same energy as Coulson, so you're not like losing an absolute ton there. While you never like you lose the occasional turn 4 Loki play. You lose the flexibility of throwing Loki and other things, right? Loki is no longer an extremely good power for cost. He's just a good power for cost. Like a fine power for cost, I guess, is how we would phrase that. Like at the end of the day, he's fine, right? Like Loki is now completely like fine as far as cost goes. Now, is this going to change how we have to build the decks? I think maybe, but I'm also going to make a big prediction. I think that this means they're going to do something to Mobius. I don't know what. But I think that this means because they've weakened Loki so much and Mobius is basically Loki tech, that they're gonna do something to like weaken Mobius a little bit. I don't think a lot, but I think Mobius might end up costing 3 or might end up being a 2/2 or something, which is gonna further push him out of the meta, which gives Loki access to Quinjet again. Loki has access to Quinjet again. This isn't a nerf anymore, right? Like now Loki's still right back to the. I'm curious still to see if this means that Loki sort of ditches the 3s and goes more in on the 2s and 1s for when you have to Loki on 5 or 6. There's no point in talking about Loki without Collector. We can like what bothered me recently, and I had this fight with a lot of people, including like really really bright people like Safety. They were like the 2-0 nerf to Collector made him bad in other decks. Before Loki, Collector wasn't in other decks, like not other good decks. So like now that he's 2/2 again, I think he's still a Loki card. There's other decks that'll play him here and there. Like he was in a couple versions of my Bounce because he was fun there. But you saw how crowded Bounce was. He doesn't really fit anymore. Like the discard stuff, he was always sort of a gimmick in. He was a high roll, but he was a gimmicky high roll. He's a Loki card still. Now he's a better Loki card because Loki is a worse card. I don't think because of the Elsa nerf, like there were decks that were cutting Collector from Loki and just saying, I'll just run Elsa and get the power I need that way. Well, you can't really do that anymore, right? So Collector goes back in all those decks. And I think that this is a huge buff, and we're going to see sort of like nutty busted Collector again. So that's my prediction for this, especially if I'm right about Quinjet slash Mobius. And if I'm wrong about Quinjet slash Mobius, they like, so, okay, they have to Mobius on 4 because that's when you're Lokiing. I guess this sort of counters the rogue thing, right? Like, it's harder to rogue. If they don't drop Mobius on 2, rogue is much. So I don't know. There's a real give and take. I think Loki's still great though. Is it the best deck in the game? I'm not sure. It's still, again, I would be shocked if Loki and Thanos were not top 5 along with one of those move Elsa shells. Dara tech Loki. Dara had a tech Loki. He was running Invisible Woman over Collector. I basically said, hey, let's throw Collector back in that deck, and that deck should still be completely sick. It answers kind of everything. Collector should still be able to get absolutely huge in this list. Loki as a 4/5 doesn't hurt it. You're playing Loki on 4 almost exclusively, or 5 in this deck any damn way, and you're still doing that. Except now you have Collector as an extra way to get bigger, and your Elsa doesn't make things get big. Seems good to me, to be perfectly honest, right? With Killmonger, I want an extra one, but I can't really have an extra one, so be it. But this deck should be great. Look, there is a great deck builder, and I think this might be one of the ways to go with Loki now, where you just say, okay, I'm going all in on Loki playing my opponent's cards and playing Loki on 4. Sven Loki is my favorite Loki deck. It has been for a while. It's basically Loki bounce. It runs Falcon as the bounce card and says, I can grow Collector that way. I can grow Bishop that way. I've got Elsa, so when I fill these lanes and bounce them, I'm getting multiple buffs. That deck should still work just fine. That's it. The deck should work just fine. It throws Nico in because Nico's an obvious fit with Falcon, right? And then it just says, let's go to town. If Shadow King comes back enough, Luke might be Mobius and Luke might switch places. If Loki goes out of the meta a little bit, I think this deck is great. This is like my favorite thing to play. I did cut Angela. I think, again, Angela no longer really fits in these shells. Kitty fits with Elsa just fine because it's also buffing Collector. But I think Angela's going to be too slow. And like I think that there's just too many other things you'd rather play than Angela if she's going to grow more slowly. This is Lambie's most recent Loki deck. Again, I cut Angela, and instead it was running Rogue, and then I cut Rogue for Nico. So I recut Angela and re-added Rogue. Should, again, be great. One of these decks is going to work. I'm completely convinced. And then, like, this is my secret baby that I told you we were talking about earlier. I think this might end up being, and Rogue could end up being, Cosmo could end up being quite a few things here. We could also end up fitting in a Luke if we end up having problems that way. I think this might be like the secret sauce. This might be where to go. It might be time to put Quinjet back in your Loki and just say, if you're not running Mobius, if you're getting greedy and cutting Mobius, my whole board is -2. It didn't matter that I had Loki. I've still got Elsa, right? I can go Quinjet, Elsa, Collector, uh Nico or Snowguard into Loki, and I still got a million cards. Good luck beating me. This is where I'm starting. I think Loki's still going to be, and gals, and not Baron and Bell. I think Loki is fantastic. I think this nerf hurts. I think what this does is gives you a chance at cube equity while people shy away from Loki because of the nerf right away. Angela is now a 2/2 with a +1. So, okay. This is the right change for Angela. I love Angela. Angela's one of my favorite cards in the game. She's part of my first Infinite. I played her basically as soon as I got her forever. Um, they've nerfed her multiple times. She's never been less than one of the best cards in the game. One of the best 2-drops in the game, one of the best cards in the game. She had to go. She just had to be nerfed because she was so powerful. Given her overall power level, this nerf makes sense. It pushes her out of the meta for a little while. Eventually, things could change to where she comes back more. Maybe she becomes a 2/3 with +1. I think a 2/3 with +1 might make her like better again. But for now, I think that like, okay. So I play her on 2, then I play a card on 3, she's a 2/3. Play a card on 4, she's a 2/4. Play a card on 5, she's a 2/5. Play a card on 6, she's a 2/6. So like I'm gonna need to bounce, I'm gonna need to multiplay, and that's like assuming I'm moving things out of there. Doing all that work for a 2/6. She's very likely a 2/4, and 2/4s are fine, right? But I don't know. This just feels like way too much work for way too little payoff now. I think the best home for her now is Sarah Control because if she costs 1, she's amazing. And Sarah has an opportunity to make her cost 1. That's all this deck is. It's still running Elsa. You can see how much damage I think the Elsa nerf did, right? Just by the fact that it's still going in basically every damn deck for me. Um, again, one of the best cards in the game, just no longer clearly the best card in the game. So I think this Sarah deck will do the job, right? Like I think this is going to be great. I think this deck actually maybe even gets a little better because a lot of its natural predators sort of take a hit, while this takes a hit. But like it was never real. It never really gave a shit about Angela and Kitty. They were away for a few extra points, while the other stuff did all the real work. The Mysterio and Hitmonkey did the work. The Bishop did the work. The Elsa filling did the work. The Shadow King and Chung and Killmonger, right? Like Kitty and Angela are fine, but they're not the deck. So like they're fine still as a way to get a few extra points. If you get a 2/4 Kitty here, you're perfectly satisfied. Okay. Thursday 4 built this Gene Leoth deck. It was running Angela. I think this is one of the few homes I still like Angela in because what this is doing is it's saying I want something big. I want to stack on Gene and then move things out. And then my opponent's going to have to keep playing on Gene, and I can do whatever I want. I can drop a Doom, I can alley off them away, I can drop a Vision and just move that big Vision somewhere. I think that this deck actually gets better, not worse. I know that's wild because 2 cards in it were 3 in the past couple weeks because you can see how old this is because it's still got the 6/5 Alioth, right? Um, weird that that didn't change. Whatever. But like you can see how old this deck is. It still works. It's still great. It's like I think the changes push people to playing more big things, more like big stuff cards, and that makes Gene incredible. I think it's Gene's time to shine. Sauron as a 3/2 is silly. Shuri as a 3/1 is silly. These are changes that fundamentally are about pushing people away from playing one of the most powerful decks. I don't think this is going to make the cards worse. It's going to lose some extremely small percentage of games that it wouldn't otherwise. Just like look, I've literally won games because Red Skull plus Shuri is 29 now instead of 30. I'm sure I'll win games because Sauron isn't adding enough anymore. But it's not a big change. That I think that Shuri Sauron is very, very, very likely the best deck in the game. I think the nerfs are intending to for you to not really realize that, and I don't think it's going to stay the best deck. I think the meta moves fast, but I think it's probably the best and easiest to play deck. I'm finally there. They wore me down. Rat Suri Shore. All right, Shuri is now. This is the deck, right? Like you might not run Alioth, you might run an extra like 2 instead, but this is the deck. This is what you play. You play this and you win. You do something like um pass 1, armor 2, Sauron 3, Shuri, Red Skull or Vision, Taskmaster. And then you win. Lovely. Enjoy. Or if you go Shuri Red Skull and you win that lane and there's another lane you're close in, you can last turn go Alioth and say thank you, I win. It's very nice. It's very simple to win this way. Enjoy your cubes. I don't know what else to say. This is like insane. Making Sora in a 3-2 does, I don't want to say nothing, but like next to nothing for this deck to harm this deck. Uatu is a 1-2. Um, they said when they made him a 1-1, if he wasn't played more, they'd buff him again. Well, this is that buff. Cool. I think he's perfectly fine. He's a cute little card. I know Lil Robitussin, our friend on Twitch, loves him. So, like, look, he's got value. He's got his fans. Good for Uatu. We're happy for him. I think the best home for him is likely Galactus. Knowing at the start of the game whether you're playing in the right lane or not is useful for Galactus decks. That's kind of it, though, right? Like, that's all his uses in this deck. Other than that, it's like the most standard Galactus in the damn world. I think it's good. I think he's good. I think this deck is probably good. But, I don't know. Like, kind of whatever. Uatu is not necessary. He's just a nice card to have. I think this is cool, and I want to play this. It might need Iron Man, but I hope not, because I really want to keep all the ones. This is Zuatu. It is a Kazoo deck that runs Uatu. It also runs Elsa because you'll be filling lanes with this. You sometimes will drop Shauna early so that you can use Elsa to fill lanes and give your little guys an extra pump. It's fine. It's awesome. If you do something like, I don't know, let's say Forge into Elsa, into Shauna, into Kazar, into Blue Marvel, and then you just drop all the ones last turn, you're going to have a really, really fun time. I don't know. Again, like, is Watu necessary here? Probably not. But like, he lets you stack ones into that spot that you might not be able to play into early. So that's got some value, right? If you know that that third location is going to be like value to fill early, you can fill it faster than anyone else. So it's not bad here. And I like the name Zuatu, so it's here. Hellcow is a 4-8, I think is huge. I think that like discard needed this because Swarm was bad for like 2 weeks and discard died. Discard lived and died with the 0-cost Swarm. But Mobius is getting played less right now, so maybe that's gone. And if that's gone, having a second 8-power card is going to be huge. This is, again, the same uh, power as MODOK, except at 4 cost. Which means you can play like this and Blade in the same turn for an 11-power turn 5. Or you can just play this on turn 4 and say, thank you, let's go. I am playing way ahead of curve with a powerful card on that turn, which is like, remember a few weeks ago when Crossbones was meta for a little bit because it was 4-8? Well, welcome to Hellcow. Okay, this is the deck to play Hellcow in, I think. I'm pretty sure. So, yeah. You do something like Nebula, Mobius, Dakin, and if you don't have Dracula, you drop Hellcow and you say, let's go. If you get that, and then if you draw MODOK, you go MODOK, and if not, then you play whatever else you can, and you'll just be fine. You can also just hold off till 5 on those games you don't see MODOK. I think I'd probably rather have Blade than Nebula in this in hindsight, but like you get the idea, where like you can go Morbius, Aline, Dakin, right? Or you can play Dracula on 4 and then save Hellcow for 5. Like you have all these different options. I think that this is probably great and should definitely be experimented with. Again, Nebula gets changed to Blade, I think, but other than that, I think this deck is sweet and worth playing. So this might be back near the top of the meta and is worth checking out. Spectrum gets buffed to a 6-7. I love this change. I think that Spectrum is severely underrated. I think that Wong Spectrum might be really good. I think the danger is Alioth, and Alioth is very likely to come back in a big way based on the other changes we've seen. Alioth was not great for a bit because Elsa and Loki were so great. And they can just sort of say, I'm going to go under you, and I'll just be ahead by enough because I went under you to win. So Spectrum as a 6-7 is great, except for Alioth. But like now Spectrum basically gets her own buff, right? So it's only +2 power, but it's +2 power in a way that helps you win a lane where Spectrum would otherwise jump in a lane and you would like almost be guaranteed to lose it. 7 and like, I don't know, a mid-range card like an armor is now a 12 power lane, and that's a real chance at winning it. I have a couple Spectrum decks I really, really like and I'm excited to try. The first one is my absolute favorite of them. Harry Manilow, a fantastic streamer, as Harry going. He posted it yesterday before the OTA. This is gonna be good. Like this is gonna be good. It's got it's a 2 lane killer, right? You only want to play in 2 lanes. But like you can lock up those 2 lanes. Morbius and Jean means like fundamentally have to play in those. If you got Mojo there, that Mojo with that buff is now a 10. A Warpath in 1 lane is a 9. That becomes an 11. Right? Luke says there's nothing you can do to stop it. Cosmo says screw your rogue. Ant-Man's a 1/6, right? Like Man Thing ruining their absolute life in that Jean lane when you can play Luke. Iron Man immediately becoming a 5/4 is great with Spectrum. This Spectrum buff is going to be humongous for this deck, and I'm so excited to see it. Be careful, obviously, not to have to Spectrum on your Cosmo. That would be bad. Next up, we have Thanos Zoo. Thanos' ongoing Zoo has always been good, and it's never really been good for me. It's never been one of my favorite builds. I think this might put it back into the meta. Um, I want, I genuinely want, I can't think of her name now. My brain is so fried. Blah, blah, blah. Goose in this deck. I don't know where Goose fits, but I want Goose in this deck over something. Maybe over Luke. I don't feel like Luke is super necessary here. Nothing really bad is happening to like my stones losing them power, right? So I think Goose wants to be here because Jean and Goose can lock the opponent out. If you Jean and Goose, they will have to play if they have a low cost card and space, they cannot play a high cost card in that lane. They have to play the cheap thing. And if you have that lane filled, which you can, especially with something like Ant-Man and Mojo, right? You've Professor X that lane for like you're gonna win that lane and ruin their life and win it. As you Spectrum elsewhere or Blue Marvel elsewhere because our else. It's gonna be really sweet. This will be one of the very first things I try. As soon as I get to play with this OTA, I'm very excited for these decks. I think Spectrum is going to be good. I think Jean is going to be great. I think Jean and Goose are going to be meta when everyone runs to all these high cost decks. And that's it. I hope you can find a deck here that you could play, that you can enjoy. Yet, don't leave. Don't leave. We will have at least 2 new decks for you tomorrow, and then more and more to come after that. Proven decks to get you to infinite. That's what we do here. Snap Judgments. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you.